Hello everyone and welcome to day two of the Virtual Island Summit 2025. Thanks so much for joining this session. My name is Jerome Di Parini and I am the Assistant Tech and Design at Island Innovation. I am based in the Philippines, the Pearl of the Orient Seas. Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services includes events, strategic communications, and capacity building. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you're interested in learning more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information available in the chat. I am very happy to be presenting the session titled Islands Reimagine, Art as a Tool for Revitalization in Japan. And before we begin, you should see a poll right now appear on your screen. So please let us know your gender, where you are connecting from, and the sector and industry you belong to. So far, I see a wide representation of people joining from Mauritius, Jamaica, Ghana. So welcome. Thank you for joining this session. So we also have some people joining from Colombia. So welcome. Thanks for joining this session. So I also invite you to please make use of the chat function to introduce yourself, where you're joining from, and make any comments during the session. Please make sure that you use the Q&A function for any questions you might have for the panelists, and we will do our best to make sure that we can address as many as possible upon the Q&A part of the session. And let's see the poll results now. So, right, so I see we have a lot of right, there's a diverse representation of people joining from North America, Caribbean, and coming from the with high representation of from coming from the private sector, and mostly the industry belongs to environmental services and ocean conservation, and followed by waste and circular economy. And thanks again for joining us for today's session. And I will hand over now to our moderator, Evangelia Paputsaki from the Japan Foundation. Evangelia, can take.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerome. Welcome to our Islands Reimagined, Art as a Tool for Revitalization in Japan. In this fireside chat, we explore how socially engaged art and creative tourism are breathing new life into rural island communities, with insights from Dr. Meng Qu, a leading researcher and practitioner in island revitalization. Drawing from his extensive fieldwork and upcoming book, Mo, as he is widely known in our Islands network, will share how culture and creativity are shaping more sustainable futures for Japan's islands. So let's make a start. Mo, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Valia, as well as Jerome, introduction. This is everybody call me Mo. I'm originally from China, but I'm now living in Japan for already 13 years. I'm mostly engaged with island as my study, and especially focus on island tourism, art, and creative tourism. Yeah, I'm so happy to join in today and share and talk with everybody.
Mo, you are the right person for this conversation. Your research bridges academia and practice. What first drew you to the intersection of art, migration, and sustainability on Japanese islands?
Okay, the biggest issue about Japanese island, I think is similar like a Korean island. They are facing the serious depopulation, aging, not enough young people. I think a lot of island community globally also facing similar issue. But Japan, this process already start right after the bubble economy, right after the 80s. So it's a really long process. Now we see like 30, 40 years of consequences from this process. Okay, let me give you a very simple example. Some of the island, two-thirds of the population are at a retiring age, so they are not really own any business or working. They just receive pension. Imagine society, two-thirds of the people in your community are not working. They just can't contribute any innovation or make changes. They need young people. So therefore, migration is highly relevant for this topic. What migrants can do on an island is an idea utopia world, right? It's also attract a lot of creative personnel. So therefore, art and creative social creation is highly relevant to this topic. So that's how I connect with the depopulation, art, island, and immigration.
Could you give us a snapshot of what socially engaged art means in the context of rural islands in Japan?
Okay, that's a great big question. Long story short, it's kind of a connect the whole art history uh, after the avant-garde movement because long story short, we know all the art exists in the white box system in the creator world in a Western domain contemporary art kind of world. But then later artists want to break these rules, especially contemporary artists. They are not really focused on how beautiful the artwork is. They want to bring the artwork out of the system, which means out of the white box, bring them to the society, bring them to the community. So it's not just placing a sculpture in the center of the island, but they want something meaningful with the community, also interact with the people, create a very relational place. So, simply speaking, socially engaged art highly connect to local culture. But how do artists, normally as an outsider, to do a community engaged or socially engaged art is very challenging. Not necessarily beautiful, but must be very meaningful to connect local culture to trigger local collective memory. That's my understanding of socially engaged art. Of course, we need a lot of examples.
Yeah, and so let's
Mm.
let's go into an example here.
Mm.
The Setouchi Triennale is often cited as a model. Just only a few days ago, BBC had a piece on the Japanese island that was saved by art, referring
Mm.
to Naoshima.
Mm.
Now, not all is good in paradise, as we say. What
Mm.
lessons stand out from its impact on the local island communities, both positive and challenging,
Mm.
based on your research?
Okay, let me just briefly introduce about this Triennale. Basically, start from 2000, early 2000, a group of entrepreneurs and also artists willing to using island to create globalized art archipelago. Basically, they revitalized 12 island into what's so called art island in Japan. And from 2017, not only Japanese government, but the OECD kind of designate Setouchi Triennale as a very successful case study for island revitalization through art and culture. After that, it's really obtained a lot of attention globally. So therefore, people always call this as a model to revitalize because the whole world want to copy this method to revitalize their own community, right? But I found after 10 years of research, it's not that simple. First, I want to criticize this word of model. I think model is highly relevant to development. It's not really suitable for revitalization because none of the community, especially island, are the same, right? And the second, people using the model, they just simply bring art. They believe tourists will come, immigrants will come, create new business, creative, bring more uh, creative islands atmosphere, match with the art atmosphere, right? But
Mm,
in my research, I found out half of the community is super successful, and half of the community has no change at all. Almost no change. I can't say there is zero change, but almost no change compared with a very successful community. Though therefore, the uh, art and tourism input from the government, from the creator, are the same. Why uh, some island success, some not? So this is more like how we treat art. Art is not a tool; it's more like a antidote or vaccine. So how to trigger communities' own willing to revitalize is the key. It's not really a model. You apply this model, you will be successful. So we have to really be careful about this. And there is also a challenge during this process. Because we have very limited resource of art. We can't make all the island like art island, right? But how do we balance the input, the investment of art compared with the speed of depopulation and aging? This is also very challenging, I think. Yeah.
It is, and you sort of rightly said there that if something works in a context doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work in another context. And this
Mm,
concept of the model is problematic in this space of revitalization because
mm.
we are keen to see what works and what we can learn. Um, you mentioned that some communities were very successful and others not. What were some of the conditions you think that enable the success in those communities?
Right. Okay, the successful factor can be from a different side. Of course, without government, national-wide government funding, as well as a local government cooperation and island municipality level government support, also the volunteer system, as well as the big foundation funding. Without this art island or festival will never happen, right? We have to understand that island, like I mentioned, two-thirds of the elderly people, they can't make changes with their limited manpower and resources, right? Even they have a willingness to make change. Okay, we have to look at another side. Right after this top-down or exogenous investment, locals need to make change. Older people hard to make change. Even they are, some of them are really active to participate, but we have to see who are the change makers, still the younger generation. If a community can receive enough younger generation through this opportunity, if they really catching up and do something, they can make changes. Or immigrants. In Japan's case, a lot of immigrants, basically more than half of the creative business and entrepreneurship, uh, and effort has been made by this bottom-up changes. It's nothing related to art festival. Art festival create an environment to attract people, attract international attention. Then the local level is those entrepreneurship actually play their active role. Without the top-down investment, nothing will happen. But without the local effort, they can't really use this opportunity, right? In an aging society, let's think in that way. So those successful islands, they basically shares very high level of co-creation between top-down and bottom-up. Therefore, I call it new endogenous. It's a very popular term recent 5 year from rural study world. Uh, then they reach a cycle. This cycle, if both sides can maintain this cycle, the island will be revitalized. Of course, if the art stop, if the tourism stop, it's hard to sustain. But I see gradually those successful community try to take over their own kind of local life and cycle. In that way, I think it's very good. On the other hand, for the other island has no change at all, they hard to attract any stable business. Also, the money, all the income from tourism, they go outside of the island. They go somewhere else. Go to the nearby city through a went-in track. It's not really a stable, rooted business in the community. I think this is a very crucial evaluation point to see how uh, what works after art, basically. This stage has nothing to do with art.
Mm. Mm. It has to
Mm.
do with the community, really.
Yes.
And so it's kind of related in a sense. How can artists and the local residents
Mm.
uh, can navigate the balance between the island cultural authenticity, let's say, and the
Yes.
tourism appeal?
Mm. Right. So, as we know, different islands shares very different culture, and some entrepreneurs are smartly exchange this unique culture with other region and also where they come from. A lot of them come from Tokyo, Osaka, the very big city. So people living there has very small space for their life, but when they see people have a really lifestyle approach on the island, they will think, wow, that's the dream life people want to have. But on the other hand, after resettled to the rural place, they realize it's not that perfect. A lot of things, there's not enough resources. They have to sacrifice something in exchange to get something. But this process is also very interesting. The similar like the artwork. As we know, a lot of famous artists, after they become rich, they hard to produce any great artwork. The same for those creative immigrants, entrepreneurs. If they are too successful money-wise, they can't be creative for social co-creation, for example. That's also very interesting. Because there are lack of any resources on the island, they become very bricolage and resourceful behavior. So use whatever they have, try to promote the island, using these resources where the big city do not really easy to get to attract people to visit and exchange during this process.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, migration plays a big part in your work because you're really essentially looking at these islands, these small, depopulated and aging islands are lacking the resources, the human resources.
Mm.
So one way of counterbalancing that is, can we use art as a revitalization tool to also, in the process, attract younger people or artists to come to these islands? In your experience, how have the
Mm.
local communities been welcoming or not welcoming the, as they're called in Japan, the I-turns, the migrants from the mainland, let's say?
Well, that's a little bit deeper question. Yeah, I start to focus on this topic right after the art research because I realize it's not about art anymore. Art just a trigger, right? So art is important to shining a spotlight, like a lighthouse. Suddenly, this island has art, so it start to
Yeah.
sparking. So yeah, that's a great question. I-turns, U-turns. There are two
Mm.
different types, right? I-turns normally describe the people come from big city, has no root in the community in the island. So U-turn basically means people might have a family ties on the island. After they grow up, they come back. They have a grandpa turn, they have parents turn, or even more complicated, a marriage turn. So they are holding very different kind of resources to start what they can do. And also for iTurn, they also have a different iTurn. Some people just come from middle of nowhere, want to create a business without any support. They are using their savings, their resources. Another type is a government program called Regional Revitalization Corps, the Chikyokuchi Kyokutai in Japanese. So
Mm.
based on these two systems, they allow those people to have a 3-year contract work on the island to have a buffer zone. Are you sure you want to stay in our community? We give you 3 years, see what you can do, see what happens. During this process, normally people can experience all kind of network and people on the island. Of course, we are human beings. We have somebody we love to work with. We also have some people I don't want to stuck with them. So people can make their own decision. Some people stay, some people leave. So statistically speaking, half of the people stay. So it's already a big success. Imagine every year there are 2, 3 people in a community. Island community has only 100 people. From that chance, they actually gaining a certain creative and working force during this process. They don't need more pension numbers, right? They want people to actually contribute with the local economy and GDP. So yeah, but half of the people can stay because normally they have a support from local. I also heard some people do not get along with older people, especially it's not by insider and outsider uh, kind of relationship. It's more by generation gap because some elderly people imagine they receive pension. They don't need a lot of new creative business, for example, but young people need. Young people need hospital, they need a school as well. Elderly people don't mind if the school kind of close, even they feel sad. But if the hospital stay, older people will stay. But for young people, if there's no school, there will be no family with kids move to the island. So therefore, they care more things than what elderly people care. For example, probably people will laugh. Some people on the island, they say, oh, what is a cafe? We don't need a cafe. Then the young people can try to convince them, if we have a cafe, then people will come. We have a place to talk, to communicate, to share ideas. But the older people say no. Unless this young woman create the cafe by herself, then locals realize, oh, this is a cafe. Okay, try to imagine this is a Japanese island, and there's nothing called cafe. There's only kisaten or tea house on the island, right? Before, but now having a cafe is a big change. So this kind of thing always happens. It's not about newcomers 100% obey the rules of the community. Of course, they need to bring changes to make sense of their life. The continuation of modern culture also kind of always compete, conflict, and rebuild and co-create a community. Always repeat this cycle.
Yeah, and what you said is really striking that
Mm.
of all these migrants of the islands, about half of them stay. This is already fantastic,
Mm.
given the challenges. But you mentioned that in Japan in particular, there are very specific mechanisms put in place to support the outwards migration to the small communities. Relating to that, I wanted to ask you whether you see any role for the universities, NGOs, or local governments in sustaining these creative tourism models. And I know you don't like the word model, but let's say sort of creative tourism initiatives, let's put it that way.
Right, right. Okay, that's a good point. What the university and other social, not professional social worker can do for this process. That's what I interpreted. Okay, university plays very important role. Uh, Actually, one back to my PhD study, I was committed to have a 1 year long island community-based project for part as part of my PhD. So I'm very familiar with this process. I think for the Setouchi Landscape, there are a lot of university actively participate in a community project by sending students not only doing their research, but actually creating a cafe or creating a community hub, that kind of activity. And because young people are very energetic, they have a lot of time, they're also very friendly because there's no kids on the island. All the elderly people see the young kids coming, they feel like their grandson come back home, that kind of feeling. They are very friendly to each other. But I also realize because it's a university project, the student change every few years. How a professor or teachers can sustain this kind of project is require a lot of management effort. So far as I know, Naoshima has a cafe, and also Shamijima probably has all kind of a similar facility run by university. It's a quite fascinating a university running a business, actually doing community revitalization efforts on the island. It's quite amazing. But in my opinion, it's very necessary. But we have to pay attention. Students, they are not professional social worker. Don't expect them to be perfect. But doing that is better than not doing that. It's very emotional kind of a social connection between society to island. And also, I realize in Japan they have a more government funding on university to doing this what they call the Chiki Genki project. How to translate that? The community healthy project to encourage students to move to the island. Actually, one undergrad student a few years ago, a Japanese student, he become a farmer on the island after he graduated. So we want more that kind of person to revitalize our island community. Yeah, that kind of initiative highly necessary. Mm.
Yeah, and I remember on a visit in the island of Mitarai, you showed us how the
Mm.
Hiroshima University PhD students, researchers were engaging with the community, asking them what they needed. And I saw that little park that
Mm.
resulted as after the conversation you had with the local community
Mm.
and the dialogue that was created, resulting in something the community wanted, and the bond, the connection, and the conversation is really
Mm.
very important. Um, Now, based on your experience in
Mhm.
the Japanese island creative islands initiatives,
Yeah.
What kind of insights might you have to offer to other island regions? What lessons, what suggestions, what insights can you offer to other island regions
Right.
from your experience?
Very important because who care about Japanese island? Just few island. We have a thousand of islands in Japan and also neighboring countries. Also, we have more islands globally. So why Japan matters? Uh, Great question because I think one at a certain stage for island community, because what we always say in English word, the isolation and the resource restraint on the island, there is very often not enough resources to make extra efforts for tourism or other things. Mm, yeah, if there is something failure, like I read several papers, like in some other island, even African islands, when some development failed, the whole before the development, local will say is a utopian island, right? People often connect these two words together. When the project fell, suddenly the island become an anti-utopian island. So it's become how we reflex what we did for the island, right? So it's very common. Revitalization happens when the population start. Then we want to bring some old culture back. So let me give you a metaphor. It's like a wood fire in winter. So most of the people just criticizing the ashes, in my opinion. But we have to look at the bright side. We have to continue the fire and the warmness, not the ash, right? If you're just looking at how many ashes we created, it doesn't make sense. We can't save everything. So we have to keep the fire continue instead of take care more ashes. In my opinion, that's a lesson need to take globally and very seriously because uh, art is just a trigger to make creative change. I think creative is a keyword. It's not only art. So very often after this art, whatever creative process, after 10 years after in Seto Inland Sea in Japan, what we have is a very diversified community come out. It's not only about art. So maybe half art, half creative, or half agriculture, half business, that kind of thing. In Japan, it's actually from agriculture word called Hano Han X. So half agriculture, half X. So now we have half creative people, half tourism, half lifestyle, maybe. Yeah, that's very possible to happen. No people have a fixed job on the future island, in my opinion. Everybody have a very multiple side. So another important thing is new indulgence. No matter what kind of development, we need a development or regeneration or revitalization as a trigger, but we also need a local side effort. This effort is not only exists on the solid local level, you also need to connect the neighboring resources and the global resources, local to extra local. So new indulgence with a relational dynamic, I think is a highly relevant to global island. No matter what kind of initiative on the island, you need this formulation. Why we can't say it's a model because every island has different resources. We would say not only socially engaged art, but like a local embodied kind of mindset is very necessary for this process. Mm.
So is that your vision of how
Mm.
islands in Japan and perhaps elsewhere can
Yeah,
reimagine themselves through
yeah,
art the next 10, 20 years with the new
yeah.
endogenous and creative local and external collaboration?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm not a fortune teller, but based on what information I have, I would say it's a dramatic change. I think most of the millions of islands in the world are very slow changing society, right? Suddenly there is a tourism or there is a creative global contemporary art coming, then it brings sudden change. Can island really adapt this sudden change? That's my side of a question. So I also recently I'm writing something related to island and utopia, dystopia, retopia, and herotopia. So I think this is exactly the process we are facing. First, people think island is ideal paradise, right? To all kind of development to attract people come from outside. Art is a part of it, creative is a part of it. They want to make utopia which is different compared with major cities. Then they realize, okay, island is not a utopia. It has so many problems, especially some island has no outcome from this process. They start to say, this is dystopia or retopia process. Then, in my opinion, island is actually a heritopia by fork. Heritopia means we have a different idea, we coexist in the same place. So it's a place accept dramatic and practical changes and create creative dialogues, allow different voices to always coexist and conflict, then recreate, then co-create together. This is always a process. I see this from old and new immigrations or with a local resident. I see this process happen all the time because immigrants carry this utopia idea of lifestyle, island life, but the locals carry very realistic and different values, which is often anti-utopia. So I see both this kind of heritopia place is forming. Yeah, but without this process, island will never create any change by themselves. That's that's my final thought.
Yes, you're right there in
Mm,
often seeing islands as a utopia,
mm.
the ideal lifestyle. The locals will tell you that that's otherwise. So we
Mm.
need to have a healthy dose of realism and
Yeah.
pragmatism as the
Mm.
locals see it. Thank you very much, Mo, for this highly stimulating fireside chat. As I was listening to you, I was thinking, perhaps art here becomes a kind of the soft infrastructure that
Right.
that can contribute to the island's regeneration.
Mm.
So also that art can be a catalyst for sustainable development when rooted in local context, the heritopia of
Yeah.
island context, supported by multi-sector collaboration. And this is really very important because you
Mm.
mentioned that we do need to have the top-down approach as well in supporting creating structures and support for the outsiders to come in and have a space to contribute. But most importantly, I would say here is what do the islanders say and what do they want? And also, can we give them also enough time to adjust because life is
Yeah.
changing for especially these depopulating and aging islands. As you say, the vast majority of them are pensioners.
Mm.
So,
Right.
they don't need a cafe or a school, but they cannot survive for long without a more complex society. So community engagement is really very important.
Right.
More than, may I say, just
Mm.
visitor numbers.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you. I think this is where we are going to end our chat with Mo. And if there are any questions, please put them on the chat box on the side here, and we can take some for as long as we have the time.
Mm.
Thank you, Evangelia. So big thanks to our moderator, Evangelia Paputsaki, and panelist Dr. Meng Qu. For today's session, we really appreciate the time and insights you shared. Made discussion engaging and meaningful. And for all of you who might have missed it, we announced very exciting news during our opening session. Island Innovation is partnering with the Cabildo of Gran Canaria to host the Global Sustainable Island Summit 2026. After this year's experience in St. Kitts and Nevis, now the Micronesian region in Europe take the spotlight. The summit will be held from April 28th to the 23rd, 2026, and we'll be discussing solutions and advancement in sustainability. Please note that all attendees of the Virtual Island Summit can get an additional discount on the early bird ticket using a special coupon shared in the chat. And that's all for today. For those in the Pacific, we're already stepping into day 3, while still evening on day 2 of the West. Wherever you are, we look forward to seeing you for day 3 of the Virtual Island Summit with a lot of exciting sessions ahead. You can also check the full agenda on our website for the upcoming sessions for day 3. And thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
And just, Jerome, can I make a quick announcement here?
Yeah.
If you really want to hear a lot more about Moz and other people's work in island heritage and art and revitalization, we will be inviting you to the Small Island Cultures Research Initiative Conference in the Philippines next June, where we will be really engaging in depth around all these issues. And if you want, check on our website, secret.net, to get more information on our event. You're all welcome.
Thank you, Evangelia, and looking forward for that event. And